friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today for a prepping review, and I'm hoping this video isn't going to be too long. Basically, I'm just going to do a quick run through of all the things that you need to consider when it comes to being prepared for what I believe is coming. And even if it's not, it's always a good idea to have certain preparations, because you just never know what can and will happen. Because even in your own little sphere, there can be any kind of disruption that can cause you to need to fall back on your preparations, whether it be your food storage, your water storage, your fuel storage, and so on. So let me do a quick review. And before I start, I want to make sure that you know, because I'm trying to make this quick. I'm not going to go into all the details of everything right here, because Patrick and I have a lot of prepping related videos out there. I will put a few different playlists down below. One of the ones we did was an 11-part series that I've since added a few more videos to, but really an 11-part series called How and Why We Prepare. I think it's maybe 3 years old now. Some things have changed a little bit since some of those videos, but for the most part, they've pretty much been the same. Now, one of the things I'm going to be doing is reading off each of the topics, most of the topics that were in that series that I just mentioned. So obviously you're going to have food storage. That's almost always at the top of the list. And yes, the very first video in that is food storage. But one video I really want you to check out is the more recent one I did called Food Storage Beyond Rice and Beans. And yes, I also have one that's more about grains and stuff. I have several on those, but I'll link to my most recent one down below. So I'll be putting those two individual videos so you can check them out. Because here's the deal with food storage. Actually, here's the deal with any of these categories. There's no one method of any of this that is going to be right for everyone. You have to weigh out the pros and cons of each way and each thing, and how to do these things and what's best for you and for your family. When you're talking food, a lot of that's going to be because of dietary needs, and a lot of any of this is going to have to do with how much space you have, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you got to keep all of this stuff in mind when it comes to any of these categories. Patrick and I, or any other channel, can share, this is what we store, this is what we do. Does not mean it's right for you. So never take anyone's advice as if that is what you have to do. These are just what people, we're just all sharing with you our own ideas and why, what we do, and even why. And so just tailor each thing to suit you. Again, weigh out those pros and cons. So of course, after the food storage, we have water and water storage. We ourselves, we collect rainwater and we store it, and we have over 2,000 gallons of rainwater stored up at through most of the year. Sometimes it's going to be a lot less than that as we use the water for watering our gardens, but anyway, we usually try to keep it topped off as much as possible. We get lots of rain around here, so that works for us, and we do have many ways of cleaning that water. Also, we use a Berkey filter, and no, I don't have one specific video yet just on our whole rainwater collection. I keep promising to do that. In that playlist, I do talk a little bit about our water storage and how we collect it. We don't actually have this one in that particular series, but we do talk about it in other things, and that is means of self-defense. Whatever that is, whatever you're able to do that's going to fit within your lifestyle, and even within just basically what you're able to do. Now, I personally believe that with certain things, civil disobedience is important. If laws go against your constitutional rights and your God-given rights, then they should not be laws, and they're unconstitutional. And you do have a right, whether it be collecting rainwater or owning a tool to protect your life. I believe these are things that you need to consider for the sake of your own safety and the safety of your family. But again, what you choose to do is going to be entirely up to you. Now, martial arts is really great, as a lot of you know. I have 2 black belts. I have a black belt in Taekwondo, and I have a black belt in Wu Wei Kung Fu, and I taught martial arts for several years. I think it was like 8 years or so, maybe 10, I don't even remember now. But anyway, having some skills like that are also really important. The same thing goes with any kind of weapon you may try to use. Is good to practice and have those skills, and you get as practiced up as possible. But having some means to defend yourself is going to be incredibly important. medicine. So many different things about medicine. So obviously stocking up on certain basics like isopropyl alcohol and hydrogen peroxide, gauze, bandages, and stuff like that is going to be incredibly important. And then if you're on any kind of prescription medication, you're going to want to look into trying to see if you can get your doctor to give you X amount of months supply if you are able. Better yet, if you are able, I recommend finding ways to get away from the big pharma drugs. That was one of the many reasons why Patrick and I took ourselves off the thyroid medication after much searching and research and me doing a lot of studying. We did it successfully and we've never gone back to the thyroid medication. We've been off for at least 8 years. I know that for certain, maybe longer now. But anyway, that was one reason why I did it, because it's like, well, if the medication at some point, we're in a situation where I can't get it, what are we going to do? The doctors made us believe we have to be on it for the rest of our lives. Well, come to find out we didn't. In fact, we're doing much better being off the thyroid medications. And yes, it was hypothyroidism, and we do still have our thyroid glands. So those are a couple important things to know. If you're interested in how we took ourselves off the thyroid medication, I'll link to that video down below as well. And along with the medicine, that is going to be your medicinal herb garden. Try to get started on that ASAP if you have not already. I am selling quite a few of the seeds on our Etsy store to a lot of the herbs that we grow for medicinal purposes here. And whatever you can't find on our store, go to Etsy and do a search and see if you can find the different herbs that you're looking for as far as seeds or even root cuttings. Root cuttings, a lot of times you can get free from people that you know that are growing things. Like anything in the mint family is pretty easy to propagate from root cuttings. I've given people mint plants frequently because they propagate so easily from just simple root cuttings, much easier than they do from seeds. So I would say top of the list really should be your medicinal herb garden, but those things do take time to get established and to grow and to get enough put up, dehydrated, and so on for all your different needs for making your cough, cold, flu medicines, your pain remedies, and the like. Okay, another thing I'd like to recommend is that you consider replacing a lot of your paper products with cloth, whether it be making table napkins. I have a video on how to do that. Making your own cloth toilet wipes. I've switched entirely to those since I think February it was, and I'm loving them. It's so much easier to do than I thought it would be, and it's definitely far easier than the cloth diapers I used with my kids. If you're a female and you're still having your cycle, look at going with cloth feminine napkins. They're a lot healthier for you as well as the disposable, and they'll always be there for you. So I have a video on how to make them. It's an older one. Might want to consider getting some made up for yourself or even buying some. There's a lot of people on Etsy that sell them. I sell them from time to time, but it's not the main thing I like to focus on my store. And that goes for any kind of paper product that you're using on a regular basis. Is there a way you can replace it with something you can just wash and reuse, because you might not be able to get those things down the road? Now, along with that though, this is going to sound contrary, I do still recommend stocking up on paper towels, paper plates, and even toilet paper if you can. And the reason for that is if you're in a situation, maybe your water gets shut off for some reason, maybe there's a break in the water line and it's taken them days to fix it, or whatever it is, and you don't have water to wash your dishes, your clothes, your toilet wipes, and so on, then it's going to be a good idea to have some paper products to fall back on to save your whatever water supplies that you do have. So these are some things to still consider. So even though we very rarely ever use paper plates, I do keep a stock of them on hand. Same thing with the paper towels and toilet paper. These are things we rarely ever use, yet they're there in case we need them because maybe we're unable to wash these things. So I think having both, kind of playing both sides of that, is really important. Along with your food, you're going to need something to cook with if you don't have electricity. So Obviously, if you have a wood stove already, you're good to go, even if it's just a very simple wood stove. I have a video I did last year on just how to cook on a basic wood stove that wasn't made to be a cook oven or a cook stove like you put in your kitchen, but just a stove for heating. If you're going to get yourself a wood stove and you're not looking at getting one to go in the kitchen, look for the one that has the largest, flattest top you can use, so you can have them as many things on there. So anyway, I'll link down below in the description box. And by the way, don't forget to click on show more or the little gray arrow if you're on a smart device to open up the description box to see all the links that we have in there. Other options you can look at are camp stoves. We've managed to pick up camp stoves at garage sales for just $1 a piece, and that's going to apply to any of the things I'm mentioning. Check secondhand. If you don't have garage sales, yard sales, and rummage sales going on around you, then go to your Facebook market. That's going to be the best thing, because you're going to be able to find places and people that are local that are selling things secondhand you might be able to get a good deal on. Be sure to check out our video on the alternate cooking and heat sources, because there's many other ways that you can cook your foods when needed that won't require electricity. Okay, obviously along with that, some of your cooking things like the camp stove, for example, you're going to need fuel, or even your wood stove, you're going to need fuel, you're going to need wood. So make sure that you're stocking up on fuel and firewood and things like that, and that you keep it always in your mind. If you run out, and if something happens and you can't get this from that source, what's another place that you can get this type of fuel, or even another type of fuel, and think of a different way to do things. So we have different types of fuels that we store. Again, we do have a video of that in that same playlist on how and why we prepare. Again, along with the food storage, you need supplies in order to be able to preserve the foods that are coming from your garden, because hopefully you're putting in a garden, no matter how small it is, even if it's just a little container garden on a tiny little deck or veranda or whatever it is that you have, depending on where you live, you're still going to need a way to dehydrate things or can things to preserve them in some form, or even freeze them. So getting a good freezer to put them in, but you may not have space for that. So dehydrating might be the choice for you. So you want to make sure you have the proper equipment needed to either can, such as jars, a pressure canner, which can also be used as a hot water bath canner, a dehydrator, but even if you have electric, have another way to dehydrate things, such as how Patrick made the wood stove dehydrating rack that I'll show you right here. I use that during the cooler months when we have a fire going and don't have as much solar power to run the electric dehydrators like I do in the summer months. Now another thing, our skills. Again, we have a video on this so you can get an idea for different types of skills that you should consider. And that's going to be dependent on you, who you are, where your natural talents and abilities lie, what kind of skills you're going to really want to acquire, or if you've already kind of got the basics down, then work on getting better at them. It could be something like sewing, crocheting, or knitting. It could be something like making soaps, woodworking, and metalwork, and winemaking, because even if some of these things aren't things you necessarily need for yourself, these are going to be good skills that you can barter with. I mean, the list goes on and on of the different kinds of skills that you should try to get under your belt, but especially anything that has to do with making things from hand and without electricity, preferably, because there's going to be people that are going to need these things. These are skills that you can, if you're good at repairing stuff, you might be able to trade your repair work for maybe a bushel of apples, or whatever it is you need. If you're into wine and mead making like I am, even though I don't drink, I like having this skill under my belt, because not only do I use the wines and the meads for making medicinal extracts and flavored extracts and cooking with, and many other things, they also are great sources of barter. So if there's someone that's really good at catching fish, you can barter a bottle of your homemade wine for that fish, or whatever it is, or even their vegetables. Maybe you can do the wine really good, but you have hard time growing a certain kind of fruit or vegetable, you can trade for that for the people that do. Or if you're like us, you're not keeping goats or any other kind of dairy animals, you can trade any of your skills or what you're growing for some local cow or goat milk, or even for some honey. Maybe you should start keeping bees. I also recommend chickens at any way you possibly can, even if it's only a couple, because not only can a handful of chickens provide you and your family enough eggs, it can give you enough to either sell or barter with. There's a lot of people that can keep chickens and some people may have a hard time with this, but I believe even in places where they say you shouldn't or they make it against the law, I still believe in civil disobedience. And if you can find a way to keep chickens or even quieter animals like rabbits or quail that can easily be hidden and are very quiet, unlike chickens are very noisy, then I recommend going with that, even if somebody tries to tell you it's against the law for you to do it there. This is where civil disobedience is important. And you got to look out for your family and taking care of them, and that's one way you can do it. Get in the habit now of bartering if you haven't already. We've been bartering for things for years. I was bartering by giving free ballet classes to a lady that had goats and chickens, and I didn't have chickens back then, and so I would get goat milk and eggs on a weekly basis, and I taught her children on a weekly basis. So even that, again, bartering is an excellent form, and I think everybody has something to offer when it comes to bartering, whether it be a skill or a product. Beauty products, toiletries, and more. Learn how to make your own. I have lots of recipes that show how to make your own laundry soap, tooth powder, deodorant, mascara, face powder, anything like this. Now, makeup, yes, those are things that are not going to be important in a major grid down situation. On the other hand, if it's something that makes you feel better about yourself, then there are cheap and easy ways that you can make it yourself. Making your own shampoo as well, and of course making your own soaps. I have videos on all of these things and much more. I'm only listing a few. Learn how cheap and easy it is to make the stuff yourself. Even like deodorant, for instance, I have several different recipes for a powdered deodorant. I actually don't even use that anymore. I simply use my own homemade colloidal silver or colloidal copper that I put just a little bit of infused oils in there just to have a nice scent. And I just dab it on, and that's what I use for a deodorant. So, and that's another thing. Learn how to make your own colloidal copper / silver, whatever generator, which we have a video on that, and then get yourself some of those heavy metals and have them on hand. We do sell the generators that we've made ourselves, but again, you can learn from our video how to make your own generator, and we also sell the copper rods on our Etsy store as well. First link you'll see in the description box down below if you're interested in that. But yeah, once you can make your own colloidal silver and colloidal copper, not only can you use it for a plethora of things, you can also use that for bartering, and I've done that as well. Obviously, space is something you're going to need to keep in mind. So your space and what you choose to stock up on and what you choose to do is going to be dependent on your space, but also a lot of times we have a bad habit of kind of looking at what we have and go, wow, this is really small. My space is really small. But you might be surprised at the many different places you can find, even in your small place, in your small space, to store things. Let's consider a sofa, for instance. Now, most of the time, a lot of the sofas that are made are have a completely hollow inside if they're not a hide-a-bed. And you might be able to cut an area in the back. Let's say if it's already up against the wall, you might be able to just cut a slit in it and store a bunch of stuff inside there. If it's not up against the wall and it's out freestanding, you still might find a way to make an opening that you can store stuff inside that sofa where it's not a visible thing. And it's also a great way to hide some of your goods, some of your foods and medical supplies and whatever else you need. And plus just giving you that extra space. Just be creative. Think under beds. I've seen people where they'll have like a water storage, and instead of having like a bed frame, They take all their water storage, they'll have several different totes, and they'll put their mattress on top of that, which actually makes the bed sit up pretty high, so you need a step ladder to get into the bed. But that's another way that you can do things like storing water and many other goods. So just be creative. Just think outside the box when it comes to storage. If you don't have a root cellar and you don't have a spare bedroom that you can use as a pantry like we do, one thing that should be really at the top of the list is getting yourself a good set of books. So I did do a video where I talked about your preparedness library. It's just kind of touching a few areas. Listen to the video and then go read a lot of the comments down below. There's a lot of people that input with their different ideas for good hard copy books to have on hand. Books are important because knowledge weighs nothing. The books weigh something, but knowledge weighs nothing. So if you have access to learn to do these things, you got to consider the fact that it's very likely the internet's not always going to be there. So having something in hard copy is really important, and something where you can resource back to learn about all these different things, be it gardening or how to sew or woodworking or metalworking, cooking and canning, and so on and so forth. Get yourself some good quality, very informative books that don't depend just on how things are done now, but how things were done years ago before so much modern technology. A few other ideas is consider your clothing. Make sure you have some good quality coats, boots, socks, and more on hand and put up for the future. And if not that, then have yourself a good supply of fabrics if you're a seamstress, so you can sew your own clothing or repair the clothing that you have. Another skill that somebody in your family really needs to have is sewing, even if it's doing hand stitching. In fact, what I'll do is just link to my sewing playlist down below as well for those who are interested. I have quite a few different sewing videos, like how to make aprons, how to make the regular just frontier style skirt in a solid color out of an old sheet, how to make patchwork skirts, how to make your cloth napkins, and so on and so forth. Now, a few things to consider, like I've already said, don't forget to look secondhand, especially if you're on a tight budget. We're at a point now that you want to do as much as you can now, as much as you're financially able to do and as much as you're physically able to do, to whether it be space or just whatever other things may be in the way. Do as much as you can and don't put it off any longer, because what we see coming, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, but it's everything I'm seeing now, it looks like we're looking at something really serious. And I don't want to be a fearmonger and scare people, but at the same time, I don't want to remain silent and not strongly encourage people to put themselves in a better situation. Now, I want to go back to the whole idea of no matter who you are or what it is, you must tailor each one of these categories to suit you and your family, because no one person's advice is going to fit entirely perfectly for you. And just because you might do it differently than me or somebody else out there, it doesn't make it wrong. It makes it right for you. So don't let anybody tell you the way you do it's wrong. It's just like the whole idea of precious metals. There is so much debate back and forth on precious metals. Do you store up on precious metals when they're not edible? But then again, they're going to be the one thing that's still going to hold its value. Stocking up on precious metals may not be for you, and don't let anybody tell you that you have to do it. If you think it would be far more wise for you to buy this piece of property down the road than to take the however much money it is you have in savings and invest it in precious metals. If you can buy this property, do that instead. That's probably going to be your better investment anyway. Instead of buying precious metals, maybe it's putting that money into more food storage, because I believe there's going to come a point where food is going to be worth more than its weight in gold. And so having a way to grow your own food, obviously, storing up is great, but also having a way to grow your own food, get started on it now while also building your food supplies. And then here's one more thing. I know I'm forgetting a whole bunch of stuff because I'm trying to keep this video as condensed as possible. But one of the things I want to throw out there is that no matter what happens, Being prepared is a form of insurance that costs you far less than the amount of money that gets poured into these scam insurance companies that are not likely going to pay out when you need them. And yet, when you don't need them, you're constantly paying in money that you will never get back. But when you're putting your money into things like having a good water storage and food storage and a good garden and a nice piece of land and some chickens, these are things that are always going to be there for you. And they're going to start paying you back immediately, even when you don't need them. But when you do need them, they're there for you. They can't deny you your claim. So just remember that. And here's another video that we did a little bit more recently that we shot out the property, was the one on investments for these crazy times, or whatever it was I called it. So some ways you might want to rethink your investments. If you've already got your mindset, or you've been doing it a certain way for 20 years, you might want to rethink the way you're investing your money and your time, and consider some of the things that are happening not just on the political realm, but also as far as the climate and the changes we've seen to our weather, and how much cooler for a lot of us it's been getting, and how our growing seasons have shortened incredibly. I recommend checking out Ice Age Farmer's channel. He has a lot of great information. I've really been enjoying his stuff. I just think you really need to listen to a lot of what he has to say and what's happening as far as food. Because of what we're seeing, I strongly believe that we're going to see some very serious food shortages coming quite soon. So that's why I'm stressing this video. I don't like to put people in fear. In fact, one of the videos in our series is do not live in fear, but also do not be complacent. You need to be on top of this. And I say this because I care. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to check out all the many links that I'll have down below, and Ice Age Farmer's channel. And also any comments, people, if you've got some more ideas that you can help get people on this path to encourage them, please put those comments down below. And if you're new to this, read those comments. We might have our own unique ways of doing things, but to at least give each other the encouragement and some new ideas that might work for each individual person and family. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.